Kate Mila Falcha, welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. I'm delighted if you're a new subscriber and this is your first Saturday book, and if you're a returning subscriber, this is the best club in the world. So last week we covered the KYBALION, which is Hermetic philosophy. Heavy going. It really, little skinny book, big thoughts. And I intentionally didn't include the rest of this stuff. I thought we needed to digest for a week. Listen, I read this thing several months ago, actively took notes on it, reread them, read them out loud, and I still feel like I need to go back. So don't be too overwhelmed. This book today, The 12 Laws of the Universe, is essentially the same thing. It's easier to digest. It's coming from a guy called Manhardeep Singh. I'm really not sure who he is. I just randomly got this book because it's difficult to find concise, collated, written information about this. So this is how he describes it on the back. This book is written in to-the-point language and tone with the intent to reach the reader in a clear way. So that sounded good to me, and I actually did really appreciate it. So we're going to go through this book, but I'm augmenting it with research that I've done on the internet, and we'll talk about that, when we get to it. So, The 12 Laws of the Universe by Manhardeep Singh, and this was written in 2023, so it's a new book. Old ideas. So, when they say the word law or principle, they're meaning something that has binding force, binding effect. The universe is held to these laws. Universal laws are intangible. They can't be touched or felt. It's up to the individual to accept or ignore. They're still there. They're boundless. That means that they're everywhere. I was taught as a child, and I'm using a lot of words interchangeably. Let's not get too hung up on semantics. Well, I was taught that, the creator, what God, the source, they didn't use the word source, the nuns would never have gone for that, was omniscient, knew everything, omnipresent, was everywhere, omnipotent, all-powerful, and always was and always will be. Now that's 1950s, 1960s Catholic school Baltimore catechism stuff. But guess what? It's also the KYBALION. So some things lasted, some things did not get lost. So universal laws are like that. They're intangible, can't really grab hold of them. Intangible, can't tangere, to be held, to be touched. Boundless everywhere, and timeless, always was, always will be. So it's believed that these 12 laws help to form our universe. Now, we can intersect with physics. We can intersect specifically with plasma physics, but a lot of these laws are going to remind you of like Newton's laws. What goes up, what must come down, that kind of thing. And this book says they're often associated with something I had never heard of, and I confess I did not research because I was busy with this other stuff. And now I'm going to mispronounce it. The Ho'oponopono Hawaiian meditation system. So that would be well worth looking into, and I yet might. And then the Egyptian Hermetic studies, philosophy. So all of these philosophies, they overlap. They're interconnected, as are we all. So the first is the law of divine oneness. All is connected. Now you'll notice they may not be in the same order. They may not have the same title as the principles of Hermetic philosophy, but we're hearing a lot of the same stuff. All is connected. Every thought, every emotion, every action, all connected. Everything you do, everything you say, and everything you think. Our ego highlights for us our individuality and our differences. And that's all very true. And this book goes out of its way to say, oh, we need to honor that. That's a good thing. But it only goes so far because it's only on one level, a three-dimensional level of our present physical reality. So we're each a unique expression of the same energy. Your thoughts and your actions affect everybody, everything. Everything has a ripple effect. Your thoughts and your actions are matter stuff. Maybe not visible, tangible to hold. You can't put a thought in a bottle, but it puts out energy. And we're going to do a book in a few weeks that comes to that same conclusion in a very interesting way. So stick around. Everything that's seen and unseen is connected to each other and connected to divine oneness. And therefore, think good about others because you reap what you sow. I think that my name was actually on this part. It's making the point that harboring negative feelings and thoughts about somebody, it's not a good thing. Which is why I really haven't said much about recent current events. Except I hope you're all recovered from your champagne hangover. Anyway, let's get back to philosophy. Divine oneness, what does that mean? He says, well, it means different things to different people, but it's all the same thing. It's got different names. Source, God, spirit, energy, karma, Buddha. We're all united. That's the important thing. Don't get hung up on the details. They vary with culture and time and history and the individual, but the important kernels of truth are the same for everybody. So, you are dust. To dust you will return. You will feed the plants and they will feed the animals. And as dirt will go into the water cycle, we are all united because we are connected. If you are low, it brings down the energy around you. And you'll notice that people who are constantly negative and depressed affect others that interact with them. Not to find fault with yourself. It's normal to feel low. It would be abnormal, I think, given our present context, to be on a perpetual high. It's not good or bad that you feel these things. What matters is how you deal with it. And it might take longer than you like. It's hard to come out of a depression. But we're all connected, and we're connected by vibration. And this is just an example. This is not a judgment about it. It's an example of something most people can relate to. If you're around people that are having a good time, you're at a party and everybody's upbeat and happy, that affects you in a positive way. And if you are around, really negative people, it's, you go to a negative political rally, you get sucked into that negativity. The second law, so that was the law of divine oneness. The second law is the law of vibration. I'm sure that'll sound familiar. Everything has a unique vibration. Everything is always in motion, a law of physics. The only difference between a solid and a gas and a liquid and plasma are the frequencies of their vibration. So you go from infrared to ultraviolet. Positive emotions have a higher frequency, things like love and gratitude and joy. And negative emotions, like pain and hate and anger, have a lower vibration. And once again, just to be really clear, it's normal to have the full range of human emotions. And we can't find fault with ourselves if we go through swing through all of the emotions available to the human experience. But everything that I've read says that what matters is then how do you cope? So we can feel the vibrations of people and situations around us. And I have apparently here a quotation from somebody whose name might ring a bell, Nikola Tesla. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. The book says, listen to your intuition and your intuitive vibration and the vibration that you generate, and you can choose to connect it and to bring it up. So this is something that you can actually actively affect, but you have to be aware of it. Often people will say, I feel really low. And that's what they're on to. That's what they're picking up on. The law is, in effect, a true working law, all the way down to the smallest part of an atom, subatomic particles, and all the way up to the biggest galaxies and universes. Higher energy particles coordinate with lower energy particles. And a way to raise your vibration, if you're really low, is to seek out the positive. So this book sometimes has really nice suggestions. And it says something that's very helpful. You know, there are multiple ways to try. Not everybody will respond to the same thing, so don't give up. Had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. There's lots of different ways to try to change your whole situation. So yoga is really good. Meditation is important for that. Sound baths. Now remember, this person is coming from more of a, I believe, Indian, or at least the Indian subcontinent point of view, which is great because we got Middle Eastern, Egyptian, although this really came from this really came from this. That's very interesting. I think this might have started out in India, filtered over to Egypt. Remember, we read about that. So something was going on in India. They also talk about chakra work, and I don't know a whole lot about that. I have trouble with spatial relationships, and when you meditate on your chakras and they start saying, imagine it's moving counterclockwise, I can't. I'm like, oh my God, I can't. So you have to find what resonates for you. So ways to increase your vibration are those sorts of things. So attract what you want. You have to make your vibratory frequency meet that you want. And this brought to mind a quote to me. This is not in the book, but it brought a quote to my mind, and I think it's appropriate. It's called, it's like a business advice. Dress for the position you want, not for the position that you have. And that's the kind of thing they're talking about. Act as if. The third law is the law of attraction. So frequencies will attract each other, and if you keep your vibration level high, good vibration is attracted to you. But you have to work with the other laws. You can't just do any of these laws in isolation. They all work together. Nobody understands. This book made a point of saying nobody fully understands all of this, or at least very few understand all of this. And most people don't understand it well enough to do it right. And so they think, well, the law of attraction doesn't work. Well, the law, like in, I think it's The Secret, which I didn't read. If something is really that popular, I figure, man. Anyway, on its face, for some, it doesn't, because they're not doing it right. You have to really read all of this and try to put all of this into play at the same time. You have to match the frequency of your desires to what you want. It's not enough to just watch it, to just want it. So, you can make a vision board or whatever, but you have to go beyond that. You have to act as if. So you have to act in a positive way. And that's something I've come to the conclusion that helped me a lot when I was really depressed, was finally the understanding that if you really are wallowing around, because that's what happens when you're depressed, you're kind of stuck there. The best way, now this is not medical advice. If you're severely depressed, get professional help. This is day-to-day life type stuff. If you're really depressed and really having a bad day, best way to deal with it is do something nice for somebody else. And don't expect acknowledgement. Do it anonymously. Just do something nice, something really simple. And it's incredible how that, it helps. So, we get what we vibrate and not what we ask for. So I could sit here all day and say, boy, I'd love to have $1 million. Well, okay. But how could I be more effective? Go out and get a job. That's the difference. So you can sit around and say, oh, I really want peace in the world. But you're fighting with your neighbors and you're fighting with your family. It's charity begins at home. So if you're looking for love, but then you're single. I've experience in my family hearing this sort of stuff. You're looking for love, and because I raised 5 girls, and you say all the good ones are taken. The suspicion that is inherent in that attitude, that kind of negative attitude, lowers your vibration and doesn't attract good stuff. It's a vibration of scarcity and frustration. So it's best to try to work on that. It's often unavoidable. It's understandable, but you can work on that. You're kind of a magnet. Your experience is basically the energy that you release. You have to vibrate at the same frequency as the things you desire. What do I have here? Oh, okay. The book says the more general lesson here is that being positive, proactive, and loving will bring more of the same things to your life. And at the same time, pessimism, fear, and lethargy will cause you to have more negative experiences in all aspects of life. How do you apply that to daily life? Well, every time I see a truck roaring by with Trump flags flying, I know what my impulse is, and I have been actively working on trying to send more positive vibes. Smile at them. Try to get them to break through that dome of hostility you can feel emanating. You can't just focus on what you want. You have to do what you want, be what you want. To get love, you have to give love. Quantum physics has come to the conclusion that all is energy, all is vibratory frequency. Everything is really scattered energy with lots of empty space. When they look in a microscope, that's what they see. When they look in a telescope, that's what they see. Your vibratory situation starts with your thoughts. So you resonate in a frequency and you're capable of increasing your internal vibratory level that's embedded in your subconscious. That's why meditation and prayer, and if you remember, I think we talked about the difference between meditation and prayer. Meditation is getting quiet and looking within, and prayer is organizing your goals, not begging and pleading and, asking for miracles. It's putting out. It's kind of like what this is saying. It's taking those positive goals and focusing on them, making them real by thinking positive thoughts. But then you have to act on them. That's why they say the laws all work together. It's not enough to just think, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. So Number 4 is the law of correspondence. As above, so below. We've talked a lot about this. It applies in physics, which is so interesting. So your inner world will determine what manifests in your outer world. Your thoughts correspond to the perception of the physical world that you have, and then to the events that happen in it. So you have to do the inner work. If you're going to improve your life in general, you have to start inside. So many of us are troubled by subconscious beliefs from childhood. That's why therapy helps people, because it forces you to think about the things that hold you back. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. That is the scariest thing I've read in a long time. So meditation is important to help clear your resistant beliefs and to clear your mind. And you need to take time to explore your inner assumptions and break through blockages that you have that are holding you back. And that's kind of a vague way of putting it, but I think we intuitively know what that means. We may not know what they are, but we know what it means. As above, so below, as within, so without. And this is directly related to the law of divine oneness. If you think about that for a minute, we're all the same. That makes sense. Patterns repeat throughout the universe on a macro scale. They repeat in the physical world around us and internally and on a microscopic level. So our external reality is a mirror of what is happening within us. Yikes. So, if your life is chaotic, look at the chaos inside of you. If your life is calm, if you want to be calm, look for inner peace. So when you face a challenge, look inside and ask, how does this outside stuff reflect my inside stuff? So the political and economic strife that's going on, the suffering of the vulnerable, we need to stop and look within and ask ourselves, how do our choices create lower vibratory situations, even just on a personal one-on-one level, because that's where change starts. Charity begins at home. That doesn't mean only help the people closest to you. It means if you want to affect large-scale change, you have to start small and do it gradually. So it's our business to manifest good in the world. But that doesn't mean we're all going to run down to the UN and make it all good today. That's not how it works. What we have to do is try to improve relationships with the people around us. Charity begins at home. This repeats quite a bit, important things. So our reality is the result of our most dominant inner thoughts. So how do we change our inner thoughts? And I think I struggle with this a little bit because my inner thoughts don't go to fascism. That's not something that I would impose on other people. So how is this my reality? It's got to do with the people who do want to impose it are putting these laws into effect more effectively. They may not even be consciously aware that that's what they're doing, but often psychopathic people, authoritarian people are so strongly driven by their desires for power and control that they put these laws into effect inadvertently. And those of us who are, la-di-da, get lazy. So how do we change our inner thoughts? Because that's where it all starts. You change your inner paradigm by recognizing that your subconscious patterns are holding you down. And we have the habits of thought often come from our upbringing. That's something that I've talked with people around me about. Starting a sentence with, God, I always, or it always happens to me, and I'm so unlucky, and why have I such worse luck? Well, change that. Start trying to look for the good, because there is the good. You don't have to be unrealistic. You don't have to be a Pollyanna. And I'm saying all this not because I'm, some sort of expert on this, absolutely not, but because that's what I go through. For sure, every day I have to tell myself, don't judge. Like on an hourly basis. The last 3 years with the lockdown have made it a lot easier. The fewer people that you have to interact with, the easier it is to be nice to people. It's terrible. It's just terrible. Anyway, so we have these habits of thought, and we have to really work. I mean, that's therapeutic work. That's what it does. It helps you to change your perspective. A change of perspective can raise your vibration. And we can do it with conscious effort. You have to work at it. It's a decision. That's what the book says. It is a decision that you make. So law number 5 is the law of action. So manifestation requires aligned action. Remember what I said? I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. Well, it's just never going to happen. It doesn't work that way. You have to do something about it. You must take action to get the results that you want. So the book said sitting on your butt and thinking about things doesn't work. So inspired action gets results. So this is my example because this is an issue at my house. Cleaning the garage. This must be approached with action, and it's like, confess something personal. My husband is very detail oriented, and I'm goal oriented, but with good organizational skills. So he's an absent-minded professor. So our garage looks like I need to volunteer for an episode of Hoarders. And it's, I'm trying to be fair, maybe 85% his junk. So, and it's not gross, it's just 25 hammers because he can never find a hammer when he wants one because he never puts anything, you can tell we've been married a while. So, the point is, you have a chore to do like that. It's overwhelming. And you can sit around like he does, month after month, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. Think, hope that the garage fairies are going to come in the middle of the night and put everything away right. Or you can do what I do, which is go in there and spend 48 hours without a break, like a tornado, and clean the whole thing out. Somewhere in the middle, there's a happy medium, which is approach change in your life by applying the right attitude without frustration, without anger, because I'll spend the whole time being mad at him, pitching things into the trash can as loudly as I can. That's not good either. But you want to approach change by breaking it down into doable action, one small step at a time, and build on it. That's how you manifest what you want, and it raises your vibratory level because you're not angry and you're not frustrated and you're not holding grudges and mad about all those open bottles of wood putty. So this process requires effort, and it doesn't have to be a pain, but it requires thoughtful effort. And the example that he gives when the effort becomes not painful is maybe somebody who's a writer and has this huge writing thing to do and looks up at the clock and realizes, oh my God, I've been so absorbed in what I'm doing that I've been writing for 3 hours without even realizing that time has gone by. You'll get absorbed into your action and it won't be painful. So achievement lies not in the results, but in what is learned in the process, which I really like that because I'm so goal-oriented, I need to be reminded of the process. So here we go. Your desires are brought to you by a thought, and you receive them by deciding to take action. You need to use your intuition and not overthink things. Small things can bring you closer to your goal. Incremental steps. Action has to meet desire, and it should be a challenge and not a struggle. If you're finding yourself at the point of utter frustration, back up and start a little smaller. This is closely linked to the law of attraction. Visualizing and the positive attitude is not enough. You have to combine it with action. We're repeating ourselves here, but it's important stuff. And inspired action is that gentle internal nudge. It's not always a plan of action. I always have an outline or a plan, but no, it's small steps. Slow down and be quiet. Create space for inner guidance. I think that's a valuable suggestion. Law 6, the law of cause and effect. Every action has a consequence. So the idea that intention and action influence our lives, this is in all spiritual traditions. The terminology might be different, but I'm thinking in terms of Catholic religion, because that's how I was raised. I don't do that anymore, but it's how I was raised. So I can't help but, refer back to that. And I would think in terms of a negative action that hurts somebody or breaks, a sin. You commit a sin. And so how do you ameliorate that? Negate it is grace. And how do you get grace? You make amends. You apologize, or you return what you stole, or you, go to prison for what you did, but you make amends. And that helps to balance the karma. And they don't say karma in Catholicism, but that's what we're talking about. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and that's physics. Oh, what happened here? My pages got stuck together. Yes. So you reap what you sow. That's from the Bible. What goes around comes around. My friends say that all the time. That's all basically the same concept related to these laws. It's the same basic idea that I think most people in every culture would recognize. And here's a great one. Shallow men believe in luck. Strong men believe in cause and effect. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Emerson, all those guys, they were philosophers as well as writers. Transcendentalism. Pretty interesting. Emerson, Thoreau. Let me tell you something about Thoreau. This is a little aside. Has nothing to do with this book. Thoreau wasn't what he purported to be. He stayed at, I believe, Emerson's property when he was in the woods, living off nature. His friends were within walking distance and brought him supplies all the time. It was sort of like a upper middle class hippie guy going to Yale and going to the park and considering it roughing. Just FYI. So if you want love, you have to put love out to the people around you. If you want abundance, you have to give generously. If you want health, you have to exercise and eat properly. Okay. So we aren't always aware of our thinking patterns, which is why we need to stop and reflect internally. To say, like I said a few minutes ago, why me? That's a very low vibratory thing. It's a victim mentality, and it's sometimes unavoidable. You don't berate yourself when you fall into human emotion. We are human. We're supposed to be learning, and you can't learn from an experience without having the experience. So we all continue to experience things that we cling to. So if we have a victim mentality, that creates more of a victim mentality. And what came to my mind, it's not in the book, but what came to my mind is like MAGA and Trump and incels and people who think women don't love me because, I'm so unlovable and they're so self-centered. Well, if you feel like there's self-centeredness around you, don't be self-centered. attract the opposite by being the opposite. Okay. So we have to take responsibility for our part in all of this, for our actions, and align our thoughts with our actions and try to identify how your inner narrative contributes to your experiences. And the book says the next time, try to make better decisions. Turn a negative into a positive. Try to get yourself to stop and go, wait a minute, I know what's happening here. And try to apply these laws. The law of cause and effect, it's a simple law. You do something and then the opposite. So it's true in the physical world. It's the law of physics. It's true in the spiritual world. And physics and spiritual, as we know, they're meeting in the middle. And he said this may not be immediately obvious to people. And I think a lot of this stuff is not obvious to most of us because most of us don't think about any of this. People are too wrapped up in, like I always say, the NFL and then Beyonce. Okay, so what you put out there may not come back to you in that moment immediately. But that vibration, that energy you put out has a ripple effect. And if you're coming from a place of anger or resentment, if you put that energy out there, you'll eventually be affected in a negative way by that. But if you dedicate yourself to try to make these small efforts of love, just to make it easy, of love, just keep doing that and keep doing that. That ripple, believe it or not, it's going to get all the way to Washington, D.C. And I know that sounds an overwhelming thing, but we're all connected and it will make a difference. Now, we might not live to see the difference, but it will make a difference. This is the law of karma, something that a number of different philosophies and worldviews would understand. Now we have law 7, the law of compensation. We are rewarded for right action because what you put out there is what you get. So next sentence, what you give is what you get. This is an extension of the law of cause and effect. You are blessed by your good deeds. You don't do the good deeds necessarily purely pragmatically. It's okay, to consciously say, I'm going to try to make myself feel better by doing something good for somebody. But then it's not okay to say, I'm going to do something good for somebody so that I look good. There's a subtle distinction there. So you can be blessed by your good deeds, but it may not come in the form that you expect. So you might do things to help people wanting, that you're going to be prosperous. And you don't ever get prosperous because that's not for you in this lifetime. You have to remember that we're living out a plan of lessons. But you might have good health and a happy family. You might have strong friendships. Doesn't always come back as you would expect it to come back. It's not okay to just give others what you think they deserve. That's not abundance for you, Well, obviously you don't want to do negative things. That's not going to benefit you. But you don't just do what you think is going to benefit you. You do because you want to do good. You have to focus on that. And for a lot of us, it's a whole new worldview. So one of his bits of advice is to over-deliver, exceed expectations. And you see that. You see people who are just consistently nice, good, generous, kind, thoughtful people. Yeah. But we could all be that way. And the example is, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Another example is from the Bible, the widow's mite, the parable of the widow's mite, which I love. Now, a mite was the smallest Roman coin. And this is from the Gospels of Mark and Matthew. The rich guy gave, but he had a whole lot more to give. And the widow, who had nothing, gave all that she had, which was the smallest coin that existed. And Jesus was in the temple, and he was saying that the poor widow put in more than all of the others, for they have all contributed their surplus wealth, but she, from her poverty, has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood. This also condemns religious leaders taking money from the poor for their own use. That's a whole other issue. So in our good works, everything depends on intention. You want to give as an act of love, not give in the hope of recognition. Be generous and kind, and when it's returned, embrace that. It's important to remember that compensation will take many forms. So you might do acts of kindness to help somebody out that's in dire straits financially. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, if I do an act of charity like that, if I give money or if I give groceries or whatever, I'll get stuff back. Maybe you get their gratitude back. That's your reward, and you need to be grateful for that. For example, to work with this law in a way that attracts or compensates love and support, ask yourself, where am I called today to serve and support others? It instills trust in us that we will be compensated for our work as long as we're open to receiving in all the many ways the universe can deliver. What needs to be clear is that compensation in this area is not limited, like money, to employment agreements or monetary compensation. Rather, it's about getting compensation for all your contributions to the world around you, including the love, joy, and kindness that you spread. Everything is rewarded. You need to remain aware of what that might be, how that may present itself. Law number 8, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. And that is that energy is always moving, always changing, never lost. This is reassuring that all energy is always in flux, and you have the power to transmute it, to change it. Energy goes where attention flows. Activate your thoughts to serve you, and you can transmute negative vibes, negative vibrations into a neutral and then into a positive. But all of this needs conscious effort. You can't just, I hope things get better, which I do, but Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. We've done his book, Man's Search for Meaning. I think the most significant book I've read, and I read a lot of these books about stuff. Small book, Man's Search for Meaning. And you can go back in my videos if you haven't read the book and you want a quick way to go through it. I synopsized it a while back. You might have to poke in the videos to find it, scroll down a bit. But Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, a man who survived a concentration camp by helping others. He was a prisoner. He had no power. He was a Jewish prisoner. But he resolved, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make this an opportunity to do good. Imagine the kind of strength of character that took. So, it's okay to acknowledge negativity. I mean, it's okay to say, oh man, I'm so depressed, or I'm so pissed off, or I'm so frustrated. But you can't wallow in it forever. Try for solutions. Try for something positive, small positive steps in the right direction. Beware of stories that you tell yourself in your head, your inner narrative. Try to make sure that you're moving in the direction of positivity. Everything is in constant flux, so we're constantly battered back and forth, and it's inevitable that things are going to get you down and you're going to be feeling negative and low. So it's important to remember you can change that. All is flux and change, and I believe that might be Buddhist. Maybe it's Hindu. I mean, last time I heard that in a classroom environment was 1972. So you can direct things to the positive, even if just by hanging around a positive person. Watch something funny. There's a great YouTube channel. If you like not naughty, but irreverent humor, there are these people. It's a family group, and it's called We've Got the Chocolate. The word chocolate attracted me. And it's a concept. It's hilarious, and it's so, you can do it for 2 minutes and you feel better. It's an extended family and friend group of young people, but also a couple of the parents, a couple of the fathers get involved now and then. And they do it like a challenge. They'll have 2 sitting on one side of the table and 2 sitting on the other side of the table, and they take turns telling each other really stupid jokes and riddles. And the challenge is try to make the other person laugh. And it's hilarious. It's lighthearted. And they warn you, they put all of their kind of bluer jokes into separate videos. So if you're very easily offended, because they're never terrible, but if you're terribly easily offended, you can always just watch their other videos. But they are absolutely hilarious, and they've got that great accent too, which really helps. So thank you, Australia. So funny. We Got the Chocolate. Watch that for 5 minutes. You'll feel better, So where am I here? Yeah, hanging around with a positive person. Thoughts put into action change physical reality. So a higher frequency can transmute a lower frequency when applied with intention. Do small uplifting things every day, just little things. Law number 9, the law of relativity. It's all relative. Let's move on. So look at what you have. You always have a better situation than you think you do, instead of focusing on what you don't have and you want but you don't have and you can't have. Let's face it, I'm never going to be over 5'2". I could hang upside down with leaded shoes or whatever. It's just never going to happen. So I have to look on the positive side of that. So if anybody can think of a positive aspect, because I am sick of shortening clothes. So anyway, look at what you don't have all the time, and you never feel like you have enough. But try to have gratitude. You don't have to be Pollyanna, but try to, you're feeling, oh my God, I wish I owned that fancy whatever. Realize I could be living on the street. So experiences are neutral. Our emotions and our thoughts and our judgments, we try to make them good and bad. They're neutral, but it's all about perception. It's all about focusing. You can look at a bad situation and be grateful, so it's no longer necessarily a fully bad situation. Remember, it's all a matter of perspective. You're poor compared to your rich uncle, but you're rich compared to the person living on the street. So we tend to compare ourselves, which is human, but everything's really neutral. Meaning in life comes from the perspective. Value comes from perspective. Number 10, the law of polarity. There are 2 sides to everything, and everything is on a continuum with opposites on either end. That makes total sense. And this is from the KYBALION. All truths are but half-truths, and every truth is half false. There are 2 sides to everything. Opposites are identical in nature, yet different in degree. I have a hard time. I understand that concept, but then that sounds suspiciously to me like moral, what's the word I want? Oh my God, my mind just went blank because I heard noise out there. Relativity, do what you want, which is a very satanic belief. It's part of the Church of Satanism. And I'm not thinking, the devil guy. This is a philosophy. It's very much moral relativity, and I don't know how I feel about that. So think about the fact that everything has polar opposites. Negative emotions have a purpose. Like I said earlier, you don't berate yourself for being depressed or angry or whatever. They provide an opportunity for emotional growth. Accept the negative. Don't, scourge yourself because you're, oh, I'm a glutton, I'm a terrible person. Don't do that. Focus on what you can do to change that situation. Don't berate yourself and hold it against yourself. So everything has an opposite, and that allows us to understand our lives. For example, they give an example of a bad breakup. Learn what doesn't work by having a bad breakup, and next time you can look for something different. Instead of repeating the pattern, try to be honest about what happened so that you don't keep repeating it. Everything is the same coin, opposite sides of the same coin. Law 11 is the law of rhythm, or the law of perpetual motion. Energy is always moving, and it moves in cycles with different purposes to each stage. Numbers are so small here. Okay. To be interested in the changing of the seasons is a happier state of mind than to be hopelessly in love with the spring. This is George Santayana. Rhythm is everywhere. So let's see here. So we need all the different stages. Everything has a time, and accept that. Don't, fight against it. Accept the process, because nothing lasts forever. Appreciate the good and whatever, and don't wallow in the bad. Go with the flow. I was telling my neighbor yesterday who was out working in the yard, I said, oh my God, I feel so guilty. I'm not working in my yard, and I spend the winter moaning about the ice and the snow and the cold weather. And then as soon as everything warms up, I start complaining about having to go out and work in the yard. Don't do that. So, observe the ebb and the flow of life and the seasons, aging, birth, death. It's all of one. The energy of the universe is a pendulum. And this is like the law of polarity. It just swings back and forth. And try to maintain a balance. That's our challenge. And finally, rule number 12, the law of gender. Manifestation requires a balance of energies and the equilibrium of the masculine and feminine energy. And this has to do with creating things and keeping a balance in creation. But the obvious example is sexual reproduction. We all contain masculine and feminine energy, and we have to achieve a balance. And the problem with a lot of cultures, including the one I was raised in, is this sense of human men and human women. Men are all masculine, women are all feminine, when actually we all should be a balance of both. And it's a false narrative that men are this way or women are this way. Humans are always. So everything requires a gestation period. That's the law of rhythm. And it's a cycle. 9 months of pregnancy, it's a cycle. Then you give birth. If you have a desire, if you really want something, you think about it. And it gestates, and then it becomes a reality when you act on it. And gestating is the balance of the male and female. It has nothing to do with genitals and gender, except word origin. It's the energy, the yin and the yang, the anima and the animus. In psychology, everybody is androgynous. We all have a right brain and a left brain, and a male impulses and female impulses. Everyone starts out in utero masculine. Is that right? Androgynous? No, everyone starts out feminine, and then because of testosterone, they become masculine. I'm confused, and that's a good thing. That means it's not clear. There's not this delineation that all men and all women, and it starts at conception, and The important thing to do is to keep your ego in check, and don't try to have dominating emotions like Like my neighbor, we overheard my neighbor one morning yelling at his wife, and because I'm the man and I said so. My husband turned to me and said, well, I guess we know what his problem is. That's the conclusion of this book. And I hope that it kind of took the concepts in this, which are intellectual, challenging, highfalutin, and deserve lots of consideration. This made it a little bit more day-to-day. That's not to say water this down. That's to say, okay, here it is, maybe a little more understandable in our modern world. And if this resonates for you, start studying this. Start really researching it. Now, I'm going to end this video here, and then in the next video, I've got, let me see here. Do I have a little bit shorter, but still, of kind of the modern, very modern. This is culture of Indian culture, the subcontinent of India culture. And now I'm going to apply it in a more contemporary fashion and maybe make things a little more clear. If they don't feel, if I don't make it clear, it's not because they're ununderstandable. It's because, you know, I'm learning it too. So thank you for watching. Let's move on to video number 2.